Hi biologists, let's start by looking at the learning objectives for this lesson. At the end of this section and following the biology syllabus, you should be able to appreciate the selective permeability of membranes surrounding the cells and within cells, be able to define and give examples of the term diffusion. What does this actually mean? What are we trying to understand? Well, it's straightforward enough. You have to be able to explain the selective permeability of membranes or why membranes are semi-permeable. You have to know the definition of diffusion and be able to give examples. Let's look at movement through cell membranes. Before we can appreciate the selective permeability of membranes, one of the lesson's objectives, let's revise or get up to speed on the structure of membranes. The structure of a cell membrane reminds me of a two-ply tissue. There are two layers in a tissue and you can pull them apart. The cell membrane is rather like that, except the tissue is made of what we call phospholipids. There's a top layer and a bottom layer of phospholipids. Hence, we call it the phospholipid bilayer. Embedded in the phospholipid bilayer, you have protein. The proteins can be removed or inserted without making any difference to the overall structure of the cell membrane. This is why the structure is rather fluid. Because the cell membrane is semi-permeable and acts as a sieve, then of course the cell membrane will have to have pores in its structure. So in a nutshell, what is the structure of the cell membrane? Well, all biological membranes, it doesn't matter whether they are cell membranes or membranes around chloroplasts or membranes around nuclei, all biological membranes have the same structure. The structure is referred to or called the fluid mosaic model. In this structure, the cell membrane has a double layer of phospholipids, a phospholipid bilayer. Proteins are embedded in the phospholipid bilayer. Detachable proteins can move throughout the bilayer without affecting its overall structure. Therefore, to summarize, membranes surround cells and organelles like the nucleus, mitochondria, and chloroplasts. All membranes have the same structure. All membranes are therefore semi-permeable. Only some molecules or chemicals will be allowed to pass through. They act like a sieve. This is the vital point here. Small molecules like water, oxygen, and carbon dioxide will pass through no bother, whereas larger molecules like salts and sugars and proteins will not pass through. Let's look at the definition of diffusion. As a heads up, make sure that you learn it. It is an objective of this lesson and specifically mentioned on the biology syllabus. Now, diffusion is the movement of chemicals from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration, from a region of where there are a lot of these chemicals to a region of where there are less. We come down from a high, so the chemicals, for those of you able for a bit more, are moving down the concentration gradient. Diffusion is passive. This means it does not require energy. It can happen by itself. Let's try to get the idea a little bit better. Imagine that I open a bottle of perfume. As we all know, the scent will travel through the room and eventually the person at the back will get to smell it. The chemicals are moving from an area of high concentration. Let's go back for a quick look at our definition. The chemicals move from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. So the chemicals will move from a region of high concentration from the bottle when it is opened to a region of low concentration through the air until eventually the person at the end of the room will smell it. Get the idea? What are the examples of diffusion? Well, we are going to focus on 3 examples: diffusion in the lungs, diffusion in the blood capillaries, and diffusion in the leaves. Let's look at diffusion in the lungs. Here we are looking at an air sac in the lungs. If we haven't studied lungs already, we can just accept that this is part of the lungs where diffusion takes place. Now, the oxygen will diffuse from the air because you have just breathed it in and the air is full of oxygen, so you have a high concentration of oxygen. So the oxygen is going to move from a region of high concentration, which is here in the air sac because you've just breathed it in, to a region of low concentration in the blood because there's less in the blood, and the oxygen will move by diffusion from the air sac into the blood capillary. Now, the carbon dioxide gas is going to diffuse from the blood, where there is a high concentration of it in the blood, to a lower concentration in the air sac. The concentration of carbon dioxide is high in the blood. Remember, you come down from a high, so that's how we know the direction that the carbon dioxide is going to diffuse in. It's going to diffuse from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration, and then you will breathe it out. What about diffusion in the blood capillaries? Well, the oxygen will diffuse from the blood where there is a high concentration. What direction will it go in? The oxygen will go from a high concentration in the blood to a lower concentration in the cell. This oxygen is needed for respiration. Remember, we come down from a high so we can figure out the direction that the oxygen will diffuse. It will diffuse from a region of high concentration in the blood to a region of lower concentration in the cell. Carbon dioxide gas. This is made in respiration in the cell. So think about it. What direction will it travel in? The carbon dioxide will diffuse from the cell where there is a high concentration to the blood capillary where the concentration is lower, because diffusion involves the movement of a chemical from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. What about diffusion in the leaves? Well, oxygen gas diffuses from the leaf into the air. Don't forget, oxygen gas is made in photosynthesis in the leaf. So the concentration of oxygen is high in the leaf. In what direction will it diffuse or travel? Well, the oxygen will move from a region of high concentration in the leaf to a region of low concentration outside. Remember, photosynthesis, oxygen out. O in photo, O for oxygen, O in photo, O for out. What about the carbon dioxide? Well, the carbon dioxide gas, which is needed for photosynthesis, will diffuse from the air. Think about it, high carbon dioxide concentration outside, into the leaf where the carbon dioxide concentration is less, because carbon dioxide is needed for photosynthesis. The carbon dioxide will diffuse from a region of high concentration outside to a region of low concentration inside. Get the idea? And there you have it. Make sure you learn your definition word perfect. Practice in a jotter. Now that we've reached the end of our lesson, have we achieved our objective? Are you able to appreciate the selective permeability of membranes surrounding the cells and within cells? Can you define and give examples of the term diffusion?